Did Elvis really only love one woman? Or was his heart a revolving door for the famous and the unknown? We think of his love songs as grand romantic gestures, but what if they were sometimes apologies or pleas or even goodbyes? What if the story behind Always on My Mind is more about guilt than lingering romance? And who was the high school girl who inspired the raw energy of his first hits long before Priscilla ever entered the picture? The answers are not what you think. Number 21. Who was the first girl to break Elvis's heart? Dixie Locke was just 15 years old when she started dating Elvis Presley in 1953. He was 18 and had just graduated from Humes High School in Memphis. He wasn't the king yet. He was a truck driver for Crown Electric Company. He had long sideburns and wore flashy clothes, which made him stand out. Dixie met him at the First Assembly of God Church. They were both deeply religious. The shared faith was the foundation of their relationship. Their dates were simple. They went to the movies at the Suzor Theater. They got milkshakes at Leonard's Drive-In. Elvis would sing to her. He would practice his songs on his guitar, and Dixie would be his first audience. She saw his raw talent before the world did. She also saw his insecurity. He constantly asked her if she liked his singing. He needed that validation. In 1954, everything changed. Sam Phillips at Sun Records called Elvis back for an audition. And Elvis recorded "That's All Right." The song became a local hit. Suddenly, the boy who drove a truck was a local celebrity. His life started to speed up. Dixie's life stayed the same. She was still a high school student. The gap between their worlds started to grow. Elvis wanted Dixie to come with him on his tours. He was playing small towns across the South. The trips were rough. They traveled in a beat-up Lincoln, but Dixie's parents said no. She was too young. She needed to finish school. Elvis couldn't understand this. He was living his dream and wanted her to be a part of it. He felt she was choosing her old life over a new life with him. The distance created problems. Elvis was on the road. He was meeting other girls. Fans were starting to throw themselves at him. Dixie would hear stories. She would get jealous. They would argue over the phone. He would promise that she was the only one. But the trust started to wear thin. The song I Forgot to Remember to Forget was recorded in the summer of 1955. It was a classic country ballad about heartbreak. The lyrics talk about a man who tries to move on but can't. Every new day just reminds him of the love he lost. The line, "I've forgotten what my heart is for," captures a deep sense of loss. Elvis sang it with a genuine sadness in his voice. At the time he recorded it, his relationship with Dixie was falling apart. They were breaking up and getting back together. The song mirrored his reality. He was supposed to be enjoying his new fame, but he was losing his first real love. He was forgetting the simple happiness he had with Dixie and remembering the pain of their separation. The song became a #1 country hit. It was his first major success, and it was fueled by his first major heartbreak. They finally broke up for good in late 1955. The reasons were simple. He was famous and she was not. He was traveling the world and she was staying in Memphis. She wanted a normal life. She wanted to go to college. Elvis's life was anything but normal. He offered her a place in his chaotic world, but it wasn't the world she wanted. Years later, Dixie said she knew it had to end. She couldn't have lived in his shadow. She married a career Air Force man and lived a quiet life. She never tried to cash in on her relationship with Elvis, but she always spoke of him with affection. She remembered the shy boy who drove a truck, not the global superstar. She was the girl who was there at the very beginning. She saw his dreams take flight, and she was the inspiration for the song that marked his transition from a local singer to a national star. The song was about forgetting, but for Elvis and Dixie, it was a song about a love that was impossible to forget. It was the sound of his past slipping away as his future rushed in to meet him. Number 20 was A Secret Love Affair, the real fuel for his on-screen chemistry. Anne Margaret Olson was a force of nature. When she met Elvis Presley in 1963 on the set of Viva Las Vegas, it was like two bolts of lightning hitting the same spot. He was 28, she was 22, he was the king of rock and roll. She was a rising star, a singer and dancer with an explosive energy that matched his own. The press immediately dubbed her the female Elvis. They were right. Their connection was instant and intense. The first time they met, they were in a soundstage at MGM for publicity photos. There was an awkward silence. And then Elvis started strumming a guitar. He looked at her and said, "I don't know about you, but I can't sing a note this early in the morning." She laughed, and the ice was broken. From that moment on, they were inseparable on set. Their chemistry in Viva Las Vegas is legendary. It wasn't just acting. The musical numbers like The Lady Loves Me and You're the Boss are filled with genuine playfulness and flirtation. They were improvising, teasing each other, and pushing each other's performances. The director, George Sidney, saw what was happening. He ordered more close-ups of Anne Margaret. He expanded her musical numbers. This reportedly angered Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker. He wanted the focus to be solely on Elvis, but you couldn't deny the energy between them. It was the heart of the movie. Off-screen, they were living the same story. They had a passionate love affair. It was a secret, but it was an open secret in their inner circle. They shared a love for motorcycles. They would ride his Harley Davidson through the hills of Los Angeles. They shared a sense of humor. They had private jokes and nicknames for each other. He called her Rusty, her character's name in the film. She called him EP. Elvis felt he had met his equal. Anne Margaret wasn't just another pretty co-star. She understood the pressures of fame. She had her own career, her own talent. She didn't need him. She wanted him. This was different from his relationship with Priscilla Beaulieu, who was waiting for him back at Graceland. Priscilla was a promise he had made. Anne Margaret was a passion he was living. The affair lasted for about a year. It was a period of great happiness for Elvis. His friends said they had never seen him so animated. He was laughing more. He was more creative. The music he made for Viva Las Vegas was some of the best of his movie-era career. It had a spark that was missing from many of his other soundtracks. That spark was Anne Margaret, but it had to end. The press got wind of their relationship. One headline read, "Elvis to marry Anne Margaret." This caused a crisis. Colonel Parker was furious, and Priscilla, back in Memphis, was devastated. Elvis was trapped. He had promised Priscilla's parents he would marry her. He was a man of his word, especially when it came to family. He had to make a choice. He chose Priscilla. He went to Anne Margaret and told her it was over. It was a painful conversation. Both of them were heartbroken. He continued with his plans to marry Priscilla, a wedding that took place in 1967. Anne Margaret went on to marry the actor Roger Smith. But their connection never truly died. They remained friends for the rest of his life. Whenever Anne Margaret was performing in Las Vegas, Elvis would send a bouquet of flowers to her dressing room in a guitar-shaped vase. He did this for every one of her opening nights. She did the same for him. It was their quiet way of acknowledging what they once had. When Elvis died in 1977, Anne Margaret was one of the few celebrities who attended his funeral at Graceland. She sat quietly with his family, away from the cameras. She was there to mourn the man she knew, not the icon the world was mourning. While there isn't one specific song that is officially about Anne Margaret, the entire Viva Las Vegas soundtrack is a document of their love affair. The energy, the joy, the raw chemistry you hear in those songs is real. It's the sound of two people falling in love. He may have sung love songs to many women on screen, but with Anne Margaret, you can hear that he truly meant it. She wasn't just an inspiration for a song, she was an inspiration for a whole period of his life when he seemed truly happy. Number 19, did he propose to the wrong woman? Anita Wood was a local Memphis celebrity in her own right. When she met Elvis in 1957, she was a DJ, a television personality on a show called Top 10 Dance Party, and a singer. She was beautiful, smart, and ambitious. Elvis was at the absolute peak of his fame. He had just bought Graceland. He was the biggest star in the world. He saw Anita on television and told one of his friends, "I want to meet that girl." They were introduced by a mutual friend. Their first date was a drive in Elvis's new Cadillac. He was charming. She was not easily impressed. She had her own career. This intrigued him. He was used to girls who would do anything for him. Anita was different. She had her own life. Their relationship quickly became serious. Anita was the first woman Elvis brought home to live at Graceland with his family. His mother, Gladys, adored her. Gladys saw Anita as a good, stable influence on her son. She hoped they would get married. For a time, it seemed like they would. Elvis gave Anita a diamond ring. He told people he was going to marry her. Anita was with him during some of the most important moments of his early career. She was there when he was drafted into the Army in 1958. She went to the train station to see him off. The pictures of them saying goodbye are heartbreaking. He was leaving behind everything he knew, including the woman he loved. While he was in the Army stationed in Germany, he wrote to Anita constantly. He called her, he told her he loved her, and that he was coming home to marry her. Anita waited for him. She put her own career on hold. She believed him, but in Germany, Elvis met someone else, a 14-year-old girl named Priscilla Beaulieu. He was lonely and grieving the recent death of his mother. Priscilla was young, innocent, and someone he could mold. He started a relationship with her, all while still promising marriage to Anita back in Memphis. When Elvis came home from the Army in 1960, things were different. He was still with Anita, but he was also secretly in contact with Priscilla. Anita started to suspect something was wrong. He was more distant, he was secretive about his calls, the press started to report rumors of a young girl in Germany. The end of their relationship came in 1962. Anita confronted him. She had found a letter from Priscilla. Elvis finally confessed. He told her about Priscilla, and that he had promised to bring her to America. He said he was confused and didn't know what to do. For Anita, the choice was clear. She couldn't be with a man who was in love with two women. And she packed her bags and left Graceland. The heartbreak from this period influenced some of his music. The song Don't, written by Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, was a song Elvis recorded in 1957 at the height of his romance with Anita. It's a simple, direct plea for love and affection. Don't. That's what you say each time that I hold you this way. He sang it with a tenderness and sincerity that was clearly directed at her. It became one of his biggest hits. When he sang it, he was singing about his desire for her to fully commit to him. Years later, after the breakup, the meaning of the song shifted. It became a reminder of what he had lost. He had asked her not to leave him, not to break his heart, but he was the one who had ultimately broken hers. Anita Wood moved on. She married and had a family. For decades, she rarely spoke about her time with Elvis. She kept his love letters private, but she was a significant figure in his life. She was more than just a girlfriend. She was his partner during his meteoric rise. Gladys Presley, his beloved mother, had given Anita her blessing. Many in Elvis's inner circle thought he had made a mistake. They believed he should have married Anita. She was a woman, not a girl. She was his equal. But Elvis was a complicated man. He made a promise in Germany that he felt he had to keep. And in keeping that promise, he let go of the woman who many believe was the real love of his life. Number 18. What song was an apology to his wife? By 1972, the fairy tale was over. Elvis and Priscilla Presley's marriage was falling apart. They had been married for 5 years, but they had been living separate lives for a while. As Elvis was constantly on tour or performing in Las Vegas, Priscilla was at home in Los Angeles, feeling more like a single mother to their daughter, Lisa Marie. She was young, beautiful, and lonely. Priscilla started having an affair with her karate instructor, Mike Stone. It was a serious relationship. She was in love with him. She finally told Elvis in late 1972 that she was leaving. The conversation was surprisingly calm. Elvis was hurt and shocked, but he seemed to understand. The lifestyle he had created had pushed her away. Just a few weeks after their separation, Elvis went into the recording studio in Hollywood. It was March 1972. He was scheduled to record new material. One of the songs brought to him was a ballad called Always on My Mind. It was written by Wayne Carson, Johnny Christopher, and Mark James. The song had been recorded by a few other artists before, but it hadn't been a major hit. When Elvis heard the song, it hit him hard. The lyrics were a perfect expression of his feelings for Priscilla. Maybe I didn't treat you quite as good as I should have. Maybe I didn't love you quite as often as I could have. It was a confession. It was an apology. The recording session was emotional. The musicians could feel his pain. He sang the song with a raw vulnerability that was rare even for him. He wasn't just performing. He was living the lyrics. He was thinking about all the times he had been on the road, all the times he had been distant, all the times he had taken Priscilla for granted. The lines, "You were always on my mind," were both an excuse and a statement of fact. He was the king, and his kingdom was demanding. But in the back of his mind, she was always there. The song was released as the B-side to "Separate Ways," another song that directly addressed their breakup. But it was always on my mind that resonated with the public. It became one of his most beloved songs. It showed a different side of Elvis, not the swaggering rock star, but a man full of regret. The song wasn't a plea to get her back. It was an acknowledgement of his own failures. He knew the marriage was over. He was accepting his share of the blame. It was his way of telling Priscilla and the world that he was sorry. Their divorce was finalized in 1973. They remained close friends. They would talk on the phone regularly. He never stopped loving her, and she never stopped loving him. Their romantic love had transformed into a deep, lasting friendship. "Always on My Mind" stands as a musical postscript to their marriage. It's a song born from heartbreak and regret. When Elvis sang it, he wasn't singing to a generic baby or honey. He was singing directly to Priscilla. He was telling her that even though he had failed as a husband, he had never stopped caring. The song is a beautiful, sad admission that sometimes love isn't enough to make a marriage work. And sometimes the most powerful love songs are the ones that are sung after the love story has ended. It was his final musical love letter to the woman who had been the center of his world for so long. Number 17, who was the woman who tried to save him? Linda Thompson met Elvis Presley in July 1972. She was 22 years old, the reigning Miss Tennessee Universe. Elvis had just separated from Priscilla. He was lonely and vulnerable. A friend arranged a private movie screening at the Memphian Theater, a favorite hangout for Elvis. Linda was invited. She was nervous, but she was also struck by his kindness and his sense of humor. They talked all night. A few days later, he invited her to Las Vegas. Their relationship began, and it was intense from the start. Linda moved into Graceland for the next 4.5 years. She was the primary woman in his life. She was more than just a girlfriend. She became his companion, his confidante, and his caretaker. This was a difficult period in Elvis's life. His health was declining. He was becoming more and more dependent on prescription drugs. He had trouble sleeping. He had mood swings. Linda found herself in the middle of a storm. She was a young woman in love, but she was also dealing with the dark side of fame. She tried to help him. She tried to get him to eat better. She tried to get him to see doctors who weren't just enablers. She would flush pills down the toilet, only to have them replaced by members of his entourage. It was a constant battle, and she was fighting it mostly alone. Despite the darkness, there was also a lot of love and laughter. Elvis showered her with gifts. They traveled together. They would stay up late talking about life, religion, and philosophy. He called her Ariadne, after the Greek goddess who helped Theseus escape the labyrinth. In a way, that's what she was trying to do for him. She was trying to lead him out of his own personal labyrinth of fame and addiction. The songs Elvis recorded during this time reflect the turmoil of his life. He wasn't writing the songs, but he was choosing them. And his performances were filled with the pain and emotion he was experiencing. The song "It's Midnight" was recorded in 1973. It's a dark, haunting ballad about loneliness and despair. It's midnight, and I'm all alone with a heart that's as heavy as a stone. Linda was often the person with him during these late-night moments of sadness. She would sit with him, hold his hand, and try to comfort him. The song captures the atmosphere of Graceland in those years. A house full of people, but with a man at the center who felt completely alone. Another song he connected with deeply was "My Boy," recorded in 1973. The song is about a father's love for his son after a divorce. Elvis didn't have a son, but he had Lisa Marie. He missed her terribly after the divorce from Priscilla. Linda said that Elvis would often cry when he sang this song. He would substitute "my girl" for "my boy" in his head. Linda was the one who was there to comfort him. She helped him maintain his relationship with his daughter. She understood his pain as a father separated from his child. By late 1976, Linda knew she had to leave. She was exhausted. She realized she couldn't save him. He wasn't willing to save himself. She loved him, but she wanted a normal life. She wanted a family. She knew she couldn't have that with Elvis. Their breakup was sad but amicable. She told him she was leaving. He understood. He knew the toll his lifestyle had taken on her. They remained friends. Linda Thompson was one of the most important women in Elvis's life. She was there during his most self-destructive years. She fought to keep him alive. The music from that era is a testament to the pain he was in, a pain that she witnessed firsthand. Songs like It's Midnight are a window into the lonely world he inhabited. And Linda was the person sitting with him in the darkness, a single light in a world that was closing in on him. She didn't inspire songs about a happy romance. She was the witness to the songs of his decline. Number 16 was his final love song, A Promise or A Desperate Plea. Ginger Alden was the last love of Elvis Presley's life. She was 20 years old when she met him in November 1976. Elvis was 41. His long-term relationship with Linda Thompson had just ended. He was introduced to Ginger by his friend George Klein. Ginger was a local Memphis girl, the reigning Miss Mid-South. Elvis was immediately smitten. He was drawn to her youth and her quiet nature. Their relationship moved very quickly. Within a few months, he was talking about marriage. He was desperate for a fresh start, for a new life. He saw Ginger as the key to that new life. This was the final chaotic chapter of Elvis's life. He was overweight and in poor health. His dependency on prescription drugs was at its worst. He was surrounded by people who couldn't or wouldn't say no to him. Ginger was thrown into this world. She was a young woman with little life experience, suddenly living with the most famous man on the planet. Elvis proposed to Ginger in January 1977. He gave her a massive diamond ring. He promised her the world. He wanted to have a son with her. He talked about naming him Elvis Presley Jr. He was trying to build a future, but his past and his addictions were catching up to him. The relationship was not easy, they argued. Ginger was not always comfortable with the strange nocturnal lifestyle at Graceland. She missed her family. She was not prepared for the intensity of being with Elvis. During this time, Elvis wasn't recording much new material. His creative energy was low, but his live performances were still happening. And in his final months, one performance stands out. It was during his last television special, Elvis in Concert, filmed in June 1977. He sat down at the piano. He looked bloated and unwell. His voice was thick. But then he started to sing Unchained Melody. It was a song that had been a hit for the Righteous Brothers in 1965. It's a song of intense, desperate love. Oh, my love, my darling, I've hungered for your touch a long, lonely time. As he sang, something incredible happened. The physical weakness seemed to fall away. His voice soared. It was filled with a power and a passion that was breathtaking. He was pouring every last ounce of his energy and emotion into that song. He was singing to Ginger. She was there watching him. The song was a declaration of his love for her. But it was more than that. It was a plea. He was a prisoner of his own fame, his own body. The long, lonely time wasn't just about physical distance. It was about the deep, profound loneliness he felt, even when surrounded by people. He was reaching out to her, asking her to wait for him, to help him break free. The performance was raw and almost painful to watch. It was the last great musical statement he ever made. 2 months later, on August 16th, 1977, Ginger Alden found Elvis Presley dead on the floor of his bathroom at Graceland. She was the one who had to make that terrible discovery. Unchained Melody was not a song written for him. But his performance of it in his final days made it his own. It became his last love song. It wasn't about the joy of a new romance. It was about the desperate hope of a man who knew he was running out of time. He was singing to Ginger, promising her a future that he would never get to have. It was a final, beautiful, tragic plea from a man who had everything and nothing at the same time. He had found a new love, but he had lost the fight with himself. Of number 15, did a summer romance with a Biloxi girl define his early attitude towards love? In the summer of 1956, Elvis Presley was on the verge of becoming the biggest star in the world. Heartbreak Hotel had been a massive hit. He was a national phenomenon, but he was also still a 21-year-old from Mississippi. He decided to take a short vacation. He went to Biloxi, a coastal town on the Gulf of Mexico. It was there that he met June Wanico. She was 18 years old, a local girl from a prominent family. They were introduced by a mutual friend. There was an immediate spark. June was not like the screaming fans who mobbed him everywhere he went. She was funny, confident, and treated him like a normal person. Elvis was captivated. For a few weeks that summer, Elvis and June were inseparable. They lived a surprisingly normal life. They went fishing, they went to the beach, they rode go-karts. He stayed at her family's home, sleeping on the floor in the living room. For a brief moment, he wasn't Elvis the superstar. He was just a young man on vacation falling in love. June saw a side of Elvis that the public never saw. She saw his goofy sense of humor. She saw his love for his parents. He would call his mother Gladys every day. She also saw his deep insecurities. He was worried that his fame would disappear as quickly as it had come. He talked to June about his fears. Their romance was intense and passionate. Elvis asked June to marry him. He even talked to her father about it. He was serious. He felt that she was the one. He bought a plot of land and talked about building a house for them. But the real world was waiting. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, did not approve of the relationship. He saw June as a distraction. He wanted Elvis to be single. A single Elvis was more appealing to his female fans. The Colonel controlled every aspect of Elvis's life, and that included his love life. When Elvis left Biloxi to go to Hollywood to film Love Me Tender, he promised June he would be back. He called her constantly from Los Angeles, but the distance and the pressures of his career started to take their toll. The Colonel made it difficult for them to see each other. He would schedule appearances and recording sessions that conflicted with their plans. The song, Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear, was recorded in early 1957. It was for the movie Loving You. On the surface, it's a simple, charming rock and roll song. Baby, let me be your loving teddy bear, put a chain around my neck and lead me anywhere. But the lyrics reflected a specific side of Elvis's personality that June knew well. He wanted to be taken care of. He wanted a woman who was both a lover and a mother figure. The playful desire to be a teddy bear was a reflection of his need for comfort and security, something he found with June in Biloxi. When he sang that song, he was tapping into the memory of that carefree summer, a time when he could be playful and vulnerable without the weight of the world on his shoulders. Their relationship ended not with a big fight, but with a slow fade. The phone calls became less frequent. Elvis was being pulled further and further into the orbit of Hollywood and global fame. June realized that she couldn't compete. She knew she would always come second to his career and to the Colonel. She eventually broke it off. She knew she had to let him go to live his life, and she needed to live hers. She stayed in Biloxi, got married, and raised a family. June Wanico represented a road not taken for Elvis. She was a connection to a simpler, more normal life that he could never have. And his time with her was a brief escape from the madness of his fame. While Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear is a fun pop song, it holds a deeper meaning when you think about his time with June. It was a song about wanting simple affection and comfort, the very things he found during that one perfect summer in Biloxi, a summer he would never be able to recreate. It was a love that was real, but it was a love that his fame wouldn't allow him to keep. Number 14, how did his mother's death shape every future relationship? Gladys Love Presley was the center of Elvis's universe. He was her only surviving child. His twin brother, Jesse Garin, was stillborn. This created an incredibly intense and close bond between mother and son. They were everything to each other. Growing up in poverty in Tupelo, Mississippi, Gladys was his protector, his confidant, and his biggest fan. She encouraged his music. She saved up the money to buy him his first guitar when he was 11 years old. He had wanted a rifle, but she convinced him a guitar was a better choice. It was a decision that changed the world. When Elvis became famous, his first goal was to take care of his mother. He bought her a pink Cadillac even though she couldn't drive. He bought her, Graceland, a mansion for the poor country woman who had raised him in a 2-room shotgun shack. He wanted to give her everything she had never had, but fame had a dark side for Gladys. She was a simple countrywoman. She was not comfortable with the wealth and the constant attention. She worried constantly about Elvis. She was scared of him flying. She was scared of the screaming crowds. She missed the quiet life they once had. She became depressed, and her health declined. In August 1958, while Elvis was in the Army station at Fort Hood, Texas, Gladys became seriously ill. He was granted emergency leave to fly to Memphis to be with her. She was suffering from acute hepatitis. She died on August 14th, 1958, at the age of 46. Elvis was completely destroyed. At her funeral, he was inconsolable. He threw himself over her casket, crying, "Oh God, everything I have is gone." He felt a guilt and a grief that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He believed that the money and the fame he had given her had somehow contributed to her death. This loss shaped every romantic relationship he had from that point on. He was searching for a woman who could fill the enormous void his mother had left. When he met Priscilla Beaulieu in Germany a year later, he was still deep in mourning. He saw in Priscilla a chance to recreate the kind of pure, idealized love he had with his mother. Priscilla was young and innocent. He could protect her. He could mold her. He once told a friend that Priscilla was young enough that he could train her in my way of thinking and my way of life. He was looking for a partner, but he was also looking for a disciple, someone who would be completely devoted to him, just as his mother had been. His later relationship with Linda Thompson also showed this pattern. Linda was a nurturing, caring woman. She took on a maternal role in his life, looking after his health and trying to protect him from his own destructive impulses. She was the caretaker, the role Gladys had always played. The song "Mama Liked the Roses," recorded in 1969, is his most direct musical tribute to Gladys. It's a sentimental song about a mother's simple joys. Oh, Mama liked the roses, she grew them in the yard, but winter always came around and made the growing hard. The lyrics are a metaphor for Gladys's own life, a life of struggle that was cut short, but the influence of Gladys goes far beyond one song. It's present in the subtext of many of his greatest love songs. When he sang songs of devotion and eternal love, he was tapping into the profound, unconditional love he felt for his mother. When he sang songs of loss and heartbreak, he was channeling the grief that never left him. His search for love was, in many ways, a search for Gladys. He was looking for her in the eyes of every woman he met. He wanted their unconditional love, their protection, and their unwavering support. But no one could ever replace her. The death of his mother was the central tragedy of his life. It was a wound that never healed, and it cast a long shadow over all the love songs he would ever sing. Number 13 was a famous co-star, the one who got away. Deborah Paget was a Hollywood starlet known for her exotic beauty and dancing skills. In 1956, she was cast as Elvis Presley's first on-screen love interest in the movie Love Me Tender. He was 21, making his film debut. She was 23, already a seasoned actress who had worked with legends like Cecil B. DeMille. Elvis was nervous. He was a singer, not an actor. He was entering a world he knew nothing about. Deborah Paget was kind and professional. She helped him feel more at ease on the set. She treated him with respect, not like a freakish rock and roll phenomenon. Elvis was immediately infatuated with her. He developed a serious crush. He would follow her around the set. He would ask her for acting advice. He told his friends that he was in love with her. He even asked her to marry him. Their on-screen chemistry was palpable. The movie was a historical drama set after the Civil War. It was a serious role for Elvis, and his scenes with Deborah have a sweet, gentle quality. The title song, Love Me Tender, became one of his most iconic ballads. When he sang it for the first time on The Ed Sullivan Show, before the movie was even released, it caused a national sensation. The performance of that song was undoubtedly colored by his feelings for Deborah. The lyrics are a simple, heartfelt plea for love. Love me tender, love me true, all my dreams fulfill. For my darling, I love you, and I always will. He was singing the words of the script, but he was also expressing his real feelings for his beautiful co-star. But Deborah Paget did not return his romantic feelings. She saw him as a sweet, talented young man, but she wasn't interested in a relationship. She was a devout Christian and was reportedly saving herself for marriage. Her family was also very protective of her. They were always on set, acting as chaperones. Elvis was not used to rejection. At this point in his life, he could have almost any woman he wanted. But Deborah was different. She wasn't impressed by his fame. She had her own career and her own strict moral code. After filming ended, Elvis tried to pursue her. He visited her and her family at their home. He tried to win them over. But it was no use. She was polite but firm. She was not going to date him. The experience had a profound effect on Elvis. It was a humbling moment for the young king. It taught him that fame and money couldn't buy everything. Deborah Paget became one of the ones that got away. He never worked with her again. She went on to marry and eventually retired from acting to focus on her religious work. And Elvis went on to star in 30 more movies with a long line of beautiful co-stars. Many of those relationships turned into brief affairs. But his first on-screen romance was with a woman he couldn't have. Love Me Tender remains his ultimate love ballad. It's the song that introduced a softer, more romantic side of Elvis to the world. And it was inspired by an unrequited crush on a sophisticated Hollywood actress who taught him his first lesson about love in the spotlight. The tenderness in his voice was real. It was the sound of a young man experiencing his first Hollywood heartbreak. Number 12, how did a songwriting couple create his most seductive hits? Well, Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller were not women, but their understanding of romance, seduction, and heartbreak from a woman's perspective was uncanny. This duo of young, white, Jewish songwriters from New York had an incredible talent for writing rhythm and blues and rock and roll hits that sounded like they came directly from the heart of Black American culture. And when their songs met Elvis Presley's voice, magic happened. Elvis first encountered their work when he recorded Hound Dog in 1956. The song was originally written for the blues singer Big Mama Thornton. Her version is a powerful, raw blues number. Elvis transformed it into a rock and roll anthem. Lieber and Stoller initially disliked his version. They felt it missed the point of the original lyrics, which were about a woman kicking out a useless man. But they couldn't argue with its success. The real collaboration began after that. They were hired to write songs for the movie Jailhouse Rock. They were given a script and locked in a hotel room in New York. They were told not to come out until they had a soundtrack. In a single afternoon, they wrote Jailhouse Rock, Treat Me Nice, You're So Square, Baby I Don't Care, and I Want to Be Free. Treat Me Nice is a perfect example of their genius. The lyrics are a simple demand for respect in a relationship. When I walk you home from school, don't, I ain't no fool. I want a little bit of recognition or you're going to be in a bad condition. It's a playful but firm statement. It's the kind of sentiment that was on the minds of millions of teenagers, both male and female. Elvis delivered it with a perfect blend of charm and swagger. Leiber and Stoller also wrote some of Elvis's most overtly romantic and seductive songs. Don't, recorded in 1957, was a slow, intimate ballad. The lyrics are a conversation between two lovers. Elvis sang it with a quiet, breathy intensity that was incredibly suggestive for the time. The song was a massive hit, and it was a favorite of Anita Wood, his girlfriend at the time. He was singing Lieber and Stoller's words, but he was directing the emotion at Anita. Their collaboration reached its peak with the soundtrack for the 1961 film Blue Hawaii. While the title track was not theirs, they contributed one of the most important love songs of Elvis's career, Can't Help Falling in Love. The melody was based on an 18th century French love song, Plaisir d'amour. Lieber and Stoller's team of writers adapted it, creating a simple, profound lyric about the inevitability of love. When Elvis recorded it, he was deeply in love with Priscilla Beaulieu. She was living at Graceland, a secret from the public. The line, "Wise men say only fools rush in, But I Can't Help Falling in Love with You perfectly captured his situation. He was a global superstar falling for a teenager. It was a risky, unconventional love. The song became his personal anthem, the closing number for most of his live shows for the rest of his career. Lieber and Stoller were masters of crafting stories in their songs. They wrote about love from every angle, the playful, the demanding, the seductive, the devotional. They understood the power of simple language and a strong beat. They gave Elvis the words and the melodies, and he gave them a voice that could make an entire generation swoon. Their influence on Elvis's love songs is immeasurable. They were not the women in his life, but they were the architects of the romantic world his music inhabited. They wrote the scripts for his musical love affairs, and Elvis was the perfect leading man. He lived the romantic turmoil, and Lieber and Stoller wrote the soundtrack. Number 11 was Suspicious Minds about Priscilla, or his own paranoia. By 1969, Elvis Presley was in the middle of a major comeback. His 1968 television special had been a huge success, relaunching his music career after years of making mediocre movies. He was back in Memphis recording at American Sound Studio with a new group of talented musicians. He was on fire creatively. One of the songs brought to him was Suspicious Minds, written by Mark James. James had released his own version of the song, but it had failed to chart. The song is about a relationship being torn apart by mistrust and jealousy. We can't go on together with suspicious minds, and we can't build our dreams on suspicious minds. At this time, Elvis's marriage to Priscilla was under strain. They had a young daughter, Lisa Marie, but the years of separation due to his movie career and her life in Los Angeles had created a distance between them. There were whispers of infidelity on both sides. The theme of the song hit very close to home. The recording of Suspicious Minds became legendary. Elvis was deeply invested in the song. He felt every word. The producer, Chips Moman, worked him hard. They did take after take late into the night. The energy in the studio was electric. The song's unique structure, with its changing time signatures and its dramatic fade out and fade in at the end, was a studio creation. When Elvis sang the lines, "I'll Let Our Love Survive," or "Dry the Tears from Your Eyes," it was a desperate plea. He was singing about his marriage. He was singing about the pressures of his fame and how they were poisoning his relationship. The paranoia in the song was not just about a cheating lover, it was about the paranoia of his life. He was surrounded by people, but he was deeply isolated. He trusted very few people. This mistrust seeped into his personal relationships. The song is a conversation. He is talking to his lover, trying to convince her that they can overcome the doubt. But he is also talking to himself. He is trying to convince himself that love can survive in the suffocating atmosphere of his life. Priscilla was not in the studio when he recorded it. She was back in California, but her presence loomed large over the session. He was channeling all his fears and frustrations about their marriage into that performance. Suspicious Minds was released in the fall of 1969. It shot to number 1 on the charts. It was his last number 1 hit in the United States during his lifetime. It became the explosive centerpiece of his new Las Vegas show. On stage, the song was pure drama. He would act out the lyrics, throwing himself into the performance with a physical intensity that was mesmerizing. He would drop to one knee, a tormented look on his face, pouring out his heart to the audience. He was performing, but he was also exercising his own demons. The song is ultimately about a trap. We're caught in a trap I can't walk out, because I love you too much, baby. This was the trap of his marriage at that point. He loved Priscilla, but the relationship was becoming impossible. It was also the trap of his own life. He couldn't walk out on being Elvis Presley. While the song wasn't written about him, he inhabited it so completely that it became his story. It was a prophecy of the end of his marriage, which would happen a few years later, and it was a confession of the deep-seated paranoia that haunted him. It wasn't just about a suspicious mind, it was about the suspicious world he had created around himself, a world that made true trust and intimacy almost impossible. Number 10, did he record a breakup anthem before the breakup even happened? In the spring of 1971, Elvis Presley was in Nashville for a recording session. His marriage to Priscilla was in a fragile state. The cracks were beginning to show. but they had not yet separated. Among the songs he chose to record was a country ballad called Separate Ways, written by Red West and Richard Minnegra. Red West was one of Elvis's oldest and closest friends. He had been with Elvis from the beginning as a bodyguard and a confidant. He had witnessed the entire arc of Elvis's relationship with Priscilla. He saw the initial joy, the long years of waiting, the dream wedding, and now, the slow, sad decline of their marriage. West wrote the lyrics from a deeply personal place, observing his friend's pain. The song is a sad, resigned look at a marriage ending, particularly from the perspective of a father worried about his child. Someday when she's older, maybe she will understand why her mom and dad are not together. When Elvis sang those words, he was singing about his own daughter, Lisa Marie. The thought of not being with her every day was devastating to him. The recording was subdued and melancholic. There was no anger in his voice, only a profound sadness. He was essentially rehearsing for the end of his own marriage. It was a strange and prophetic moment. He was giving voice to a future that had not yet happened, but that he must have known was inevitable. The lifestyle he led, the constant touring, the isolation of his fame, had created an unbridgeable gap between him and Priscilla. The song was an acknowledgement of that reality. A little over a year later, in late 1972, the prophecy came true. Priscilla told him she was leaving. The separation was real. After the split, RCA decided to release Separate Ways. They paired it with Always on My Mind as the B-side. The two songs were a perfect combination. Separate Ways was the sad statement of fact, the acceptance of the end. Always on My Mind was the emotional apology, the look back in regret. The single was a hit. The public understood that Elvis was singing about his own life. It was a rare moment of public vulnerability for a man who was usually guarded and private. The song also reveals the important role that women played in his music, even when they weren't the direct inspiration. In this case, Priscilla's unhappiness and the impending collapse of their family life were the catalyst. But the song was filtered through the eyes of a male friend, Red West, who then gave it back to Elvis to sing. It was a complex emotional triangle. Separate Ways is not one of his most famous songs, but it is one of his most honest. It's the sound of a man facing the consequences of his life and his choices. He wasn't the swaggering king of rock and roll. He was just a man, a husband, and a father watching his world fall apart. And he did what he always did when he was in pain. He sang about it. He recorded the breakup anthem of his own marriage before he and his wife had even officially broken up. Number 9, what role did the Memphis Mafia wives play in his music? The Memphis Mafia was the name given to the group of friends, family, and employees who surrounded Elvis Presley. They were his inner circle, his constant companions. They lived with him, traveled with him, and worked for him. And with them came their wives and girlfriends. Women like Patsy Lacker, Joe Smith, and Sandy Miller were a constant presence at Graceland and on the road. These women were not the inspiration for his love songs in a romantic sense. Elvis was loyal to the woman he was with at any given time, whether it was Priscilla, Linda, or Ginger. But the wives of the Memphis Mafia played a crucial, often overlooked role. They were his extended family. They created a semblance of normal domestic life inside the strange bubble of his fame. They were his audience. When Elvis got a new demo of a song, he would often play it for everyone in the house. He would watch their reactions, especially the women's reactions. He valued their opinions. If they liked the song, if it made them dance or made them cry, he knew it had potential. They were his first focus group. They were also his connection to the real world. They talked about their own relationships, their children, their everyday problems. Elvis was an avid observer. He would listen to their stories. These stories of love, marriage, and heartbreak fed into his understanding of the emotions he was singing about. He was isolated, but through them, he could still touch the lives of ordinary people. Consider a song like Kentucky Rain, recorded in 1969. It's a story song about a man searching for a woman who has left him, walking through the cold rain to find her. It's a song full of desperation and longing. While not directly about any one person, it captures a universal feeling of romantic distress. The women of the Memphis Mafia who had their own share of relationship struggles could relate to these emotions. Their positive reaction to such a song would have reinforced Elvis's decision to record it. These women also provided a female perspective that Elvis valued. They could tell him if a lyric felt honest or if a sentiment rang true. He was a man singing love songs that were primarily for a female audience. Having a trusted group of women around him gave him a sounding board. Life at Graceland was a community. The women would often cook and take care of the house, creating a family atmosphere. This environment of domesticity was important for Elvis. It was a safe haven from the pressures of the outside world. This feeling of home and security, provided in large part by these women, allowed him the emotional space to be vulnerable in his music. They were not his muses in the traditional sense. He was not writing poems to them or singing ballads about them. But they were the fabric of his daily life. They were the background music to his career. They normalized his abnormal world. Their influence was subtle but significant. They helped him choose his material. They grounded his understanding of the emotions he was conveying. And they created a stable home environment that allowed the king of rock and roll to step back and just be a man who sang about the complexities of the human heart, complexities he saw playing out every day in the lives of the women who were part of his chosen family. Number 8, did a teen idol co-star challenge his romantic ideals? Tuesday Weld was not a typical Hollywood starlet. She had a reputation for being intelligent, rebellious, and a bit of a wild child. She started her career as a child model and actress and had a difficult upbringing. By the time she was cast opposite Elvis in the 1961 film Wild in the Country, she was 18 years old and already a veteran of the industry. Elvis was 26. He was just out of the army and in the midst of his clean-cut movie career. Wild in the Country was a more serious, dramatic role for him. He played a troubled young man from a poor family who discovers he has a literary talent. Tuesday Weld played a flirtatious, seductive cousin. On set, there was a definite attraction between them. Elvis was used to co-stars who were sweet and accommodating. But Tuesday was different. She was independent and outspoken. She challenged him. They would have long conversations about books and philosophy. She treated him as an intellectual equal, not just a pop star. Elvis was intrigued and a little intimidated. He was in a committed long-distance relationship with Priscilla, who was still in Germany at the time. But he was known to have affairs with his co-stars. He pursued Tuesday Weld, but she was not easily won over. She had a reputation for dating older, more intellectual men like the actor John Ireland. Their on-screen relationship in Wild in the Country reflected their off-screen dynamic. There is a tension and a spark in their scenes together. She is the one who is often in control, teasing and provoking him. The theme song for the movie, Wild in the Country, is a ballad about a restless spirit. I'm a wild one, yes I am, but I'm not a wild one to be tamed. The lyrics speak of a desire for freedom and a reluctance to be tied down. While the song is from the perspective of his character, it resonated with Elvis's own feelings at the time. He was trying to be the good soldier, the clean-cut movie star, and the faithful long-distance boyfriend to Priscilla. But there was still a wild, rebellious part of him. Tuesday Weld brought out that side of him. She represented a different kind of woman than the one he was building his future with. Priscilla was young, innocent, and devoted. Tuesday was worldly, complex, and independent. She wasn't looking for a man to take care of her. It's unclear if their relationship ever became a full-blown affair. Accounts differ. But what is clear is that she made a strong impression on him. She challenged his ideas about what a woman could be. The song Lonely Man, also from this period, captures a different side of his emotional state. It's a song about a wanderer who can't find a place to belong. I'm a lonely man, that's what I am, searching for a woman I can love. At the time, he was surrounded by beautiful women and adoring fans, yet he often felt a deep sense of loneliness. His interactions with a complex woman like Tuesday, Weld may have highlighted this feeling. He was attracted to her independence, but it was also something he couldn't have or control, which left him feeling isolated. Tuesday Weld was a brief but significant figure in his Hollywood years. She wasn't a passive love interest. She was a sparring partner. She offered him a glimpse of a different kind of relationship, one based on intellectual connection and mutual independence. She may not have been the inspiration for a classic love song, but she was a challenge to his romantic worldview, and that challenge subtly influenced the more introspective and melancholic music he was making at the time. Number 7. Who was the little sister he sang about? In 1961, Elvis recorded the rock and roll hit Little Sister. The song was written by Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann, a legendary songwriting team who also wrote Viva Las Vegas and Suspicion. The song is a classic rocker with a driving beat and a frustrated, urgent vocal from Elvis. The lyrics tell the story of a man who used to date a woman. Now he's interested in her younger sister. He sings, "Little sister, don't you kiss me once or twice, then say it's very nice, and then you run, little sister, don't you do what your big sister done." On the surface, it's a straightforward rock and roll story, but to understand the energy and the attitude Elvis brought to the song, you have to look at the context of his life at the time. He was deep into his Hollywood movie career. He was making several films a year. Each film brought a new, beautiful co-star. These relationships were often fleeting and superficial. He was the biggest star in the world, and many women were drawn to the image, not the man. This could be a frustrating experience. At the same time, his relationship with Priscilla Beaulieu was in a strange limbo. He had left her behind in Germany when he returned from the army in 1960. He was writing to her and calling her, promising that he would bring her to America. But he was also living the life of a single wealthy movie star. There is a theory that Little Sister was a coded message reflecting his complex romantic situation. The experienced Hollywood women he was dating. These were women who were his peers, but the relationships were often disappointing or ended in heartbreak. They would run after the initial excitement was over. The little sister, in this interpretation, could be a symbolic representation of Priscilla. She was younger, more innocent. He saw her as a fresh start, a chance for a different kind of love. The plea in the song, "Don't you do what your big sister done," could be seen as his hope that his relationship with Priscilla would be different, that it would be real and lasting, unlike his Hollywood flings. This is, of course, a symbolic interpretation. Doc Pomus and Mort Schumann did not write the song specifically about Elvis's life. But Elvis was a master interpreter. He could take a song and make it personal. He infused it with his own emotions and experiences. The frustration in his voice is real. It's the frustration of a man who is tired of games. He wants something genuine. The driving, almost aggressive rhythm of the song matches this feeling. It's not a sweet love song, it's a demand for honesty. Whether or not he was consciously thinking of Priscilla when he sang it, Little Sister perfectly captures the duality of his love life in the early 1960s. He was living one life in Hollywood, full of glamour and temporary romance, while simultaneously trying to build a future with a young woman who was thousands of miles away. The song is a snapshot of that tension, a rock and roll cry for a love that was simple and true, a love he hoped to find with his own little sister. Number 6 was Are You Lonesome Tonight? About a real lost love. Are You Lonesome Tonight is one of the most iconic and unusual songs in Elvis Presley's catalog. It's not a rock and roll song. It's a sentimental ballad that dates back to the 1920s. What makes it unique is its spoken word bridge, a dramatic monologue delivered over a gentle melody. Elvis recorded the song in 1960, shortly after he returned from the army. It was reportedly a favorite song of Colonel Tom Parker's wife, Marie. The colonel suggested that Elvis record it. Elvis was hesitant at first. It was old-fashioned, not his usual style, but he decided to give it a try. The recording session in Nashville was late at night. The lights in the studio were turned down low to create a mood. Elvis sang the song, and when it came to the spoken bridge, he ad-libbed parts of it, making it more personal. I wonder if you're lonesome tonight. Someone said that the world's a stage and each must play a part. The monologue is a dramatic, almost theatrical performance. He's speaking to a former lover, remembering a time when she loved him. Now the stage is empty, and he is alone. To understand why this song resonated so deeply with him at that particular moment, you have to look at the women who were no longer in his life. The biggest loss, of course, was his mother, Gladys, who had died just 2 years earlier. The feeling of emptiness and the bare stage could easily be interpreted as a metaphor for his life without her. But there was another more recent loss. His serious pre-army girlfriend, Anita Wood, was still in his life, but their relationship was strained. He had met Priscilla in Germany, and he was torn. He was in the process of letting Anita go, a woman his mother had loved and approved of. The sadness and regret in the song could be seen as a reflection of his guilt over the end of that relationship. The song is about looking back at a love that is over. The stage is bare, and I'm standing there, with emptiness all around. This perfectly described his emotional state. He had come home from the army to a world that was different. His mother was gone. His relationship with Anita was dying. He was stepping back onto the world stage as a superstar, but his personal life was in turmoil and filled with a profound sense of loss. Are You Lonesome Tonight became a massive #1 hit. It showed a new, more mature side of Elvis. It appealed to an older audience and proved that he was more than just a rock and roller. Years later, in 1969, during a performance in Las Vegas, Elvis famously broke into laughter during the spoken word part of the song. A woman in the audience took her wig off, and it made him laugh so hard he couldn't finish the monologue. That famous Lawhing version of the song became a hit in its own right. But the original recording is no laughing matter. It is a masterpiece of heartbreak and nostalgia. It was a song suggested by his manager, but it was a song that Elvis made entirely his own. He poured the grief for his mother and the regret over his fading love for Anita Wood into that performance. It was a song from another era, but he made it a timeless anthem of loneliness, proving that even when the whole world is watching, a man can still feel completely and utterly alone. Number 5. How did a famous actress's rejection shape his Hollywood persona? Natalie Wood was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood when she met Elvis Presley in 1956. She was 18 years old, but had been acting since she was a child. She was intelligent, ambitious, and already a 2-time Academy Award nominee. Elvis was 21, the new king of rock and roll, and a cultural phenomenon. The studio arranged a date between them. It was a classic Hollywood publicity stunt. Natalie flew to Memphis to visit Elvis at his home on Audubon Drive. She spent a few days with him and his parents, Vernon and Gladys. Gladys was reportedly very impressed with Natalie. She was a proper movie star, and Gladys thought she would be a good match for her son. For Elvis, it was more than just a date. He was genuinely starstruck. He was a boy from Mississippi, and here was a real Hollywood princess in his house. He was on his best behavior. He was charming and polite. Natalie, however, was not as impressed. She found the constant presence of his friends and family to be overwhelming. She was used to a different kind of life. She later told her sister that Elvis was a country boy and that his world was not for her. She found his entourage, the early version of the Memphis Mafia, to be strange. She couldn't understand why he needed so many people around him all the time. After her visit to Memphis, the romance, if it ever was one, fizzled out. They remained friendly, but they were from two different worlds. This rejection from a star of Natalie Wood's caliber had an impact on Elvis. It was another early lesson in the difference between his public image and his private reality. He was the man that millions of girls screamed for, but he couldn't win over one of Hollywood's most respected young actresses. This experience likely influenced the persona he adopted in his subsequent Hollywood movies. He often played the charming outsider, the rough around the edges guy who has to win over the sophisticated, hard-to-get girl. This was a role he understood from his real-life experience with women like Natalie Wood and Deborah Paget. Consider the song One Night, which he recorded in 1957. The original lyrics were, "One night of sin is what I'm now paying for." He changed them to the more romantic "One night with you is what I'm now praying for." The song is a passionate plea for a single night of love. It has a raw, bluesy energy. It's the song of a man full of desire, a man who is not going to be easily denied. This swagger and confidence in his music was a stark contrast to the polite, nervous young man who had tried to woo Natalie Wood. His music became a place where he could be the fantasy version of himself, the version that always got the girl. Natalie Wood went on to have a legendary career and a famously turbulent love life with Robert Wagner. Elvis went on to build his own kingdom at Graceland, surrounded by the very people that Natalie had found so strange. Their brief encounter was a footnote in both of their lives, but it was a significant one for Elvis. It was a clash of cultures, the raw energy of the new rock and roll South versus the polished sophistication of old Hollywood. And it helped to shape the on-screen and on-stage persona of a man who, in his music, could be the irresistible lover he wasn't always in real life. Number 4, what did the girl next door teach him about love? Before the fame, before the screaming fans, before Graceland, there was a girl named Billie Jean. She was not a celebrity. She was not a beauty queen. She was a regular girl who lived in the same public housing complex as the Presley family in Memphis, called Lauderdale Courts. In the early 1950s, Elvis was a shy, awkward teenager. He was finding his style, growing his sideburns, and learning to play the guitar. Billie Jean was one of his first serious crushes. She was the classic girl next door. Their relationship was a sweet, innocent teenage romance. They would hang out at the local drugstore. They would go to the movies. He would sing to her. He was not yet Elvis Presley. And he was just a boy with a guitar and a dream. Billie Jean's family, however, did not approve of him. They thought he was strange. His clothes were too flashy. His hair was too long. He was from the wrong side of the tracks. They forbade her from seeing him. This was Elvis's first real taste of rejection based on who he was. It was a painful experience. It fueled the outsider mentality that would later become a key part of his rock and roll rebellion. The song That's All Right, his first single, recorded at Sun Studio in 1954, captures the spirit of this period. It's a cover of a blues song by Arthur Big Boy Crudup. The lyrics are about a man telling a woman that it's okay if she leaves him because he'll get along just fine. That's all right, mama. That's all right for you. That's all right, mama. Just any way you do. There's a defiant, youthful energy to the song. It's the sound of a young man who has been hurt but is refusing to be broken. He's turning his personal pain into a public declaration of independence. When Elvis sang That's All Right, he was singing about more than just a single girl. He was singing about the feeling of being an outsider, of being told you're not good enough. He was channeling the frustration he felt when Billie Jean's parents rejected him. He was taking that personal slight and turning it into a universal anthem of resilience. The song, of course, changed everything. It made him a local star overnight. It was the beginning of his journey to becoming the king. Billie Jean eventually married someone else and lived a quiet life. She was a memory from a time before the world changed for Elvis. But she was an important one. She was a reminder of a simpler time, of innocent love and painful rejection. She was one of the first to break his heart, and in doing so, she unwittingly provided some of the emotional fuel for the song that would ignite a revolution. The girl next door who said goodbye helped to create the rebel who would say hello to the world. Number 3 was his first on-screen kiss with his real-life girlfriend. By 1957, Elvis was a major movie star. His first 2 films, Love Me Tender and Loving You, had been huge successes. For his third film, Jailhouse Rock, the producers were looking for a fresh face to play his love interest. They found Judy Tyler. Judy Tyler was a talented young actress and singer. She had just come off a successful run on Broadway in the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical Pipe Dream. She was smart, funny, and had a natural girl next door quality that contrasted well with Elvis's rebellious image. On the set of Jailhouse Rock, Elvis and Judy developed a close friendship. He was still in a serious relationship with Anita Wood at the time, but he was known for his on-set flirtations. With Judy, however, it was different. There was a deep mutual respect and affection. He admired her professionalism. She was not intimidated by his fame. They would run lines together, and he would often ask her for acting advice. The chemistry between them is a key part of what makes Jailhouse Rock one of his best films. Their relationship on screen feels genuine and believable. She is one of the few co-stars who could match him in terms of charisma and screen presence. The musical numbers in the film are iconic, especially the title sequence. But there is also a beautiful, tender ballad called Young and Beautiful. In the film, Elvis sings this song to Judy in a quiet, intimate moment. The lyrics are a promise of eternal love, even as time passes. When I'm old and gray, dear, I'll remember this day. Dear, you were young and beautiful to me. He sang the song with a genuine warmth and tenderness. It was a reflection of the real affection he felt for Judy. Their friendship was a bright spot for him during the hectic, often lonely life of a movie star. Tragically, just a few weeks after filming on Jailhouse Rock was completed, Judy Tyler and her husband were killed in a car accident in Wyoming. She was only 24 years old. Elvis was devastated by the news. He was so upset that he could not bring himself to watch the finished film. For the rest of his life, he refused to ever watch Jailhouse Rock. It was too painful a reminder of the young, vibrant friend he had lost. The song Young and Beautiful took on a new, heartbreaking meaning. It was no longer just a love song from a movie. It became a memorial. It was a tribute to a promising life cut short. When you listen to the song now, knowing what happened, it's impossible not to be moved by the tragic irony of the lyrics. Judy Tyler was not a romantic love in Elvis's life. She was a dear friend. But the bond they formed was real, and it translated into one of his most believable on-screen romances. Her sudden death was one of the first great tragedies he experienced after becoming famous. It taught him a harsh lesson about the fragility of life, and it forever changed the way he and his fans would hear the simple, beautiful promise of the song he sang to her. Number 2, did a Vegas headliner inspire his infamous onstage moves? In the early days of Las Vegas, long before Elvis became its king, there was a queen. Her name was Anne Margret, and she was an electrifying performer. But before her, there were other powerful women who commanded the Vegas stage. One of the most famous was Juliet Prowse. Juliet Prowse was a South African dancer and actress who became a major star in the late 1950s and early 1960s. She was known for her incredible dancing ability and her long, beautiful legs. She starred opposite Frank Sinatra in the film Can-Can, and they had a high-profile, tumultuous romance. In 1960, Elvis was cast to star opposite Juliet Prowse in the film G.I. Blues. It was his first film after leaving the army. The film was a light-hearted musical comedy about an American soldier stationed in Germany. Juliet played a tough, hard-to-get nightclub dancer named Lily. On set, Elvis was in awe of her. She was a world-class dancer, and he had always been a great admirer of professional dancers. He was a natural mover himself, but his style was intuitive and raw. Juliet's was trained and precise. He would watch her rehearse for hours. They had a brief, well-publicized romance during the making of the film. It was likely a showmance, a relationship for the duration of the shoot, but there was a genuine spark between them. He was drawn to her confidence and her talent. She was not just another pretty face. She was a powerful performer in her own right. The influence of Juliet Prowse on Elvis can be seen in his physical performance in G.I. Blues. He moves with a new kind of confidence and precision. Their dance numbers together, particularly in the song A Night Is So Right for Love, are a highlight of the film. She pushed him as a performer, but her influence extends far beyond that one film. His later Las Vegas stage shows in the 1970s were known for their high-energy, karate-inspired moves and dramatic choreography. This theatricality was something he had first encountered up close with Juliet Prowse. She, like other Vegas headliners, knew how to command a large stage and hold an audience's attention, not just with her voice, but with her entire body. Consider the song Fever, a classic that Elvis performed many times in his live shows. The song is slinky, sexy, and requires a performance that is both controlled and suggestive. His famous finger-snapping, hip-swiveling interpretation of that song owes a debt to the style of performers like Juliet Prowse. She had mastered the art of stage seduction long before he made Vegas his home. Juliet Prowse was a mentor of sorts. She showed him what it meant to be a true Vegas headliner. She showed him the level of professionalism and showmanship required to own that stage. Their romance was fleeting, but her impact was lasting. She was one of the first women he encountered who was his equal in terms of stage presence. She didn't just inspire a love song. She inspired a new way of performing, a style that would help him conquer Las Vegas and secure his legacy as the greatest entertainer of all time. She helped turn the raw rock and roller into a polished, professional showman. Number 1 was the ultimate love song about a woman he barely knew. The song is Can't Help Falling in Love. It is arguably Elvis Presley's most famous and most enduring love song. It has been played at countless weddings and has become a global anthem for romance. The common story is that the song was inspired by his deep love for Priscilla Beaulieu, the young girl who would become his wife. And in many ways, that is true. He recorded it in 1961 when his love for her was new and all-consuming. But the origins of the song and the woman connected to it go back much further, to a time and place far removed from the world of rock and roll. The melody of Can't Help Falling in Love is based on a French song from 1784 called Plaisir d'amour, which means the pleasure of love. The music was composed by Jean-Paul Égide Martini. The lyrics were from a poem by Jean-Pierre Claris de Florian. Plaisir d'amour is not a happy song. It is a song of heartbreak. The lyrics translate to, the pleasure of love lasts only a moment. The grief of love lasts a lifetime. It tells the story of a man who has been abandoned by his lover, a woman named Sylvie. He is left with nothing but the pain of her memory. The song was a favorite of Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France before the French Revolution. She was a woman who lived a life of incredible luxury and privilege, but also one that ended in tragedy and loss. She was a patron of the arts and music, and the melancholic beauty of Plaisir d'amour would have appealed to the romantic sensibilities of the era. When Elvis's songwriters Hugo Peretti, Luigi Creatore, and George David Weiss were tasked with writing a ballad for the movie Blue Hawaii, they adapted Martini's beautiful, haunting melody. They threw out the heartbreaking French lyrics and wrote a new, optimistic set of English words. Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. They transformed a song of tragic, lost love into a song of hopeful, inevitable love. So when Elvis sang his ultimate love song, he was, in a way, channeling the spirit of a woman who had been dead for over 150 years. He was singing a melody that had once been enjoyed by the Queen of France. The original inspiration was not a Memphis teenager, but a French queen living on the brink of a revolution. This connection doesn't diminish the personal meaning the song had for Elvis and Priscilla. He made it his own. His performance is so sincere and so full of emotion that it became their story, but the history of the song adds a layer of beautiful, poignant complexity. It shows how music can travel through time, changing its meaning, but never losing its power. A melody that once spoke of the pain of a love that ends was reborn to speak of the joy of a love that is just beginning. The woman who inspired Can't Help Falling in Love was not just one woman. It was Priscilla, the girl he loved in the present. And it was Marie Antoinette, the ghost of a queen from the past, a woman who understood, perhaps better than most, that the pleasures of love and the grief of love are two sides of the same timeless coin. Elvis, a king in his own right, took a melody beloved by a queen and made it a song for everyone, for all time.